The EU Cyber Resilience Act is now law. If you're building a product with digital elements like hardware, software, anything that connects, you have 2 key dates to become ready. September 2026, you have to report actively exploited vulnerabilities and severe incidents. December 2027, the CRA becomes fully applicable. And for a systematic approach to application security, both dates are literally tomorrow. In this short video, I will show you how the SAMMY tool can help you figure out where you stand and what you need next. For more information on the CRA itself, we have created a podcast series together with my legal counterpart, Lara Brito, where we discuss the nitty-gritty details of the technical obligations. The first step to prepare for CRA compliance, of course, is to know whether your product needs to comply with the CRA. This is why we have built a quick tool to screen your product for compliance requirements. Here is what the tool looks like in a nutshell. There are 4 steps to it. The first couple of steps ask for basic information regarding your product. Let's say your product transmits and stores data. It's a hardware or software product, and it is going to be placed on the EU market. Clearly, if you're not working on the EU market, you don't have to comply. The next step is asking for certain exclusions from the CRA scope. Medical devices, motor vehicles, and so on. Most likely, you're going to pick none of the above. And then finally, CRA is also interested in your supply chain role. If you're a manufacturer, you end up with product classification where you can still determine whether your product is a default product or it's important class 1 or class 2. And again, most products are going to fall under default product obligations, default PD. The tool is free of you can use the tool completely free of charge at sammy.codific.com/CRA. Assuming you have CRA obligations, what are your next steps? Well, your first option is to leverage OWASP SAMM. You can do a SAMM assessment using either an Excel spreadsheet or our SAMMY tool, which is completely free of charge, available for everyone out there. And then as you go through the SAMMY tool, you can fill out the assessment for OWASP SAMM. Once you have done your complete assessment, you can switch to the reporting mode and then pick a target posture, which is called CRA Readiness Baseline. This will immediately show you where your gaps are. And then once you know where your gaps are, you can start improving these activities and making sure that you work towards your CRA compliance. Option B is to use our CRA framework. Couple of words about the CRA framework. SAMM will get you really close to CRA compliance. However, first of all, even in SAMM, there are topics that are not really necessary for CRA compliance. For instance, SAMM asks you to continuously improve your risk assessment methodology. CRA doesn't really care about this. CRA only says you have to have a risk assessment in place without specifying the methodology itself. Secondly, we also have CRA compliance related requirements that are not really in SAMM. For instance, CRA asks you to keep records of technical user and product documentation, whereas SAMM doesn't really care that much about documentation per se. Finally, and most importantly, SAMM focuses on your overall AppSec SDLC. CRA is focused on the product. So together with my colleague Lara Brito, who is a legal expert, we've done a deep dive into the CRA and created the CRA framework that is sort of a minimum viable framework to prepare you for compliance. So instead of using the OWASP SAMM framework, you can also use the CRA framework and then do an assessment using the CRA framework. The assessment looks more or less like for SAMM, but there are much less number of questions. And the question quality criteria are tuned specifically towards CRA. So for instance, many of the quality criteria in this case are going to talk about the product and not really your application process and so on. Once you have completed the CRA specific assessment, you can again go to the reporting and then see your gaps that the tool has helped you identify. and you can start working on closing these gaps. You can even create an improvement roadmap where you say, you know what, we're going to focus on our risk assessment methodology because we have a partial implementation there and we're going to get that to completion, and then work on things like incident response. And then only at the end, we're going to work on user documentation, technical documentation, and product documentation. Finally, there is another secret/hidden option where imagine you have already created a SAMM assessment. You are using SAMM as a framework and you still want to use the specific CRA framework that we have created. You can always use our mapping feature where you can select, I want to map the SAMM assessment to the CRA assessment. And then something that we have added recently is the possibility to generate a CRA assessment based on the information that you have done using the SAMM assessment framework. And this is a nearly instant action. We are not using any AI, by the way, but we can derive the answer to a large extent based on what you have filled out in SAMM. In the detailed view, so there is a quick view and a detailed view. So far, I've been only demonstrating the quick view because it's much easier and more comfortable to work with. In the detailed view, you will have a little bit more information as to how we have generated this score. What was your original score in SAMM? Some mapping information, coverage, and then how did we come up with this score? We have also copied over the documentation from the SAMM assessment. So we have kept things like the set of evidences or the observations for documentation purposes. And now you can go ahead and then much more quickly finalize this CRA assessment based on your SAMM assessment and then get to the same gap analysis report that I was talking about. Probably it is a good idea, and again you have to select the target posture here, the CRA readiness baseline. Probably it is a good idea not to just blindly click on I accept all the answers as the ground truth, but then go through them and then make sure that the CRA nuances are correctly shown and visible in the selected answers. Last but not least, we have started working towards a new plugin for managing risk assessments and threat modeling, which can again help you with the CRA assessment. In the products management, you can start creating products where you define how critical each of these products is for you. And then, of course, in the context of the CRA, you're going to work one product at a time. You can also set up a base risk profile for each product where you define how important is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. From this point on, you can go and start doing your risk analysis or risk assessment. You can set up and define your context. You can create risk scenarios or fear scenarios that the executive leadership is worried about, and then use these risk scenarios to start working on threat modeling. And the threat model methodology that we offer is very straightforward. You can create your threats by typing a title, description. You can select the owner of each threat. And then once it's added, you can synchronize this thread to your Jira and then further work on this issue in Jira directly. There is a bidirectional synchronization. So once this issue is marked as done in Jira, we're going to synchronize the thread status here and it will be closed. Obviously, as soon as you hook it up to Jira, your thread status is no longer modifiable in the SAMMY tool itself. And finally, an interesting aspect of the threat modeling tool is that we also have a diagramming capability foreseen in the tool where you can create threat modeling using the actual DFT stencils or any other shapes that you like. Draw.io is integrated under the hood, and by the way, the whole information you can export to your own machine and then upload as an XML file. So go today to sammy.codific.com and start preparing for your CRA compliance. Thank you for watching this tutorial video.